Alright, oh, I'm a bit washed out, aren't I? I'm a bit shiny. Hang on. There you go. A bit of shadow there. Don't worry, I haven't said anything interesting yet, and probably won't, let's be honest. Right, we've got a minute to go before we start. I'm talking to no one else, that don't matter. I'm going to do my cue. I'm just going to lurk and have a drink, as I always do at the beginning. Hey, Paul. How you doing, mate? Good to see you. This is the awkward few seconds again. I'm having a drink. Excuse the horrendous noise. That's going to sound terrible. I've got to do this. Years of street performance knackered my throat, I think. First time I made it one of your live streams, and I'm first. You are. There's 5 now, but it's not about the numbers. It's quality, not. Look how shiny I am still. It's quality, not quantity, Paul. And hey, Will, how you doing? It's nice. Sorry about yesterday, by the way. I'll say it again in a minute. Right. So we're all right. It's 4 o'clock. I'm going to give it another minute before I start. I'm going to play with cards. Show you one of my favourite colour changes. It might look rubbish on here. Oh no. There you go. Afternoon. So there you go. That's my favourite colour change. Good, isn't it? And that one. A little treat for early birds, those committed. That's a one-handed top change followed by a very badly performed. Long time no see, Joseph. Joseph. And the funny thing is, Joseph, I mentioned you on my podcast this morning and called you Jason, which is hilarious. There you go. Sorry about that. Right. It's 1 minute past. We can start. So how you doing? Went out for pizza. I had my first pizza last night in 3 months because I've been on a keto diet. I felt like I'd had about 8 pints when I got home. I couldn't stay awake, like an old man. So why am I so shiny? Right. So we'll get on with it. So first of all, sorry for yesterday. Yesterday, loads of stuff happened in the morning. Loads of quite heavy stuff. And I was so tired, and I was gonna do the recording at 4, and then it was like whenever it was, I put the thing on Facebook and not Facebook, on YouTube, saying it's not gonna happen. It would have been a mess. It would have been a horrible mess. Nobody wants to see me like that. So I thought we'd best do it today. So I'm gonna do what I did before and answer the questions in my comments section. I've also done a pre-record of some questions as well. I want to try and get more I want to get more content out. You always look tired, do I? I'm 46, mate. I'm 46. Of course I'm tired. I am always tired. I'm not always tired. I feel, and this energizes me. But it's a bags behind the eyes. I'm starting to look like Bill Murray. I look at every day. I look in the mirror and see someone slightly older than the day before. It's like I can see the change daily. It's like CGI or something. So what I'm going to do is I'll have to ignore some of the comments. I don't like it because I feel like I'm ignoring people, but I'll answer this question. So this was from Yinhao or Yinhowie80 on the comments. And he said, Steve, the most valuable thing that you can share, I believe, is your own real-life performance experience. Pocket management, or e.g. pocket management, audience management, effect selection, presentation, etc. Also the business side of that. Now, a lot of people asked for help with the business side of things, but there are also a lot of us aren't into the business side, but the getting the gigs bit. I'll talk about that a little bit because I think it's quite interesting anyway, even if you're not going to get loads of gigs, to hear people's different thoughts on it. There are a lot of arguments about the business side of magic, so I'll talk about that in a minute. But I'll mostly talk about the audience management. I'm looking at my laptop, by the way. I'm not ignoring you. So now, audience management is was a huge part of what I did for a living for a long time. I was a street performer in Covent Garden for way over 10 years. And I used to go out on every day of the week. The only time you couldn't work when it was raining, physically raining. But if it was wet, if it was a bit snowy, if it was icy, I would go out and work. Hit the like button, that would be lovely. Thanks, mate. And what I learned very quickly, I've probably told this story before, but very quick story, which probably be too long rather than really quick. But when I really struggled as a street performer for a long time. I had the odd nice show, but I couldn't maintain any consistency, which actually happened at the end of my street performing career as well. The consistency went again, like at the beginning and the end. But the reason I couldn't get it at the beginning was I didn't know how to manage or create rapport with an audience. And I have talked about this before, I know I have, but a massive part of street performing was audience management. It's knowing how to respond and react to an audience that isn't very predictable. So, you know, one day you'll be doing exactly the same thing as you were the day before. The first day it could be brilliant, the next day you're saying the same things, feeling the same way, and the audience just won't respond. So I knew I had to be flexible with my audience. And so managing an audience really is first of all reading an audience. I think is having a feel of what the energy is in that crowd. The classic thing with street performing, if you ever watch a beginner street performer, they go out and they know they've got to gather a crowd, so they go out and start shouting and making loads of noise, and that kind of works a little bit, but sometimes it doesn't, and you think, right, I'm getting people to look at me, people are looking around, why aren't they stopping? Especially in Covent Garden when people go to watch shows. And so sometimes you'll watch a show in Covent Garden, you'll start a show in Covent Garden, and there'll be loads of people waiting to see a show and you still can't gather an audience. Oh God, it's so, I just took me back. I used to sometimes go out when it was heaving and still not get an audience. They'd stop and then walk away. And it's because you've got to match where they are. So even if there were a lot of people there, it doesn't necessarily mean there's a lot of energy in the room. So I think it's knowing where they are and going in at their level. So in NLP, they call it pace, lead. I don't agree with a lot of NLP stuff, but I agree with some of it. And the idea is that you look at where they are, you go in at where they are, and if you want to get them on board with what you're doing, then build them up as an audience. So when it started working with me is when I started going out on to the cobbles in Covent Garden. There'd be a few people there and I'd just start chatting with them. And once I could feel that they were with me and being really honest with them and saying, no, I'm going to start showing them. It's a bit of a nightmare, it's a bit quiet, but it does get better. At the beginning, it's going to be just me gathering the audience and kind of getting them on board with that. And then once they were with you, then by the end of the show, everybody's clapping and cheering, etc. So audience management, and this question, I'm looking down here at the question, by the way, that Yin Hao 80 or Yin Howie 80 asked me, it was a bit vague, but my experience with audience management is to practice it. I used to love going out and improvising. And we've got a lot of leeway as magicians. We're very, very lucky because we've got the magic trick. So we can improvise around that. And if our improvisation doesn't go too well, we know we've got a killer magic trick to fall back on. And by improvisation, I don't mean doing something that outlandish. I mean just trying to play with something that happens in the audience. If you notice someone in the audience, mention it. Mention what they're wearing. And I don't mean it an insult. It can be just something people like to be interacted with. If you hear lay people talk about performers that improvise and interact, they're always really into it. They love that idea of that freshness of it, even if it isn't a killer gag every time. So I think if you can, practice audience management, practice different ways. Don't try and stay too scripted because that won't give you any freedom with management, with stuff that might happen. So, I think there's a thing in scripting magic. It's something about being aware of a bagel or noticing the bagel. And he talks about a play where there's two different scenes going on next to each other in a play and they're separated. And a bagel falls off a table in one scene, I might be getting this completely wrong, and rolls into another scene. And the actors in the other scene acknowledge it as a thing because it's a real thing that's happened in their world. They don't go on about it, but it's an acknowledgement of really what's going on. So I think as magicians, if we're too scripted, something might happen, and if we don't acknowledge it, it's a bit unnatural. So that was, and this very much my way of doing things. I've never really had a script, so to speak. I've got stuff that I become on, but I've always really loved that thing of audience management, and that's why I don't actually like it, which is going on to the next thing. When the audience are too well behaved, I like to get a little bit back. I like to have a little bit of bants, a little bit of banter, some people shouting out in good nature. Don't get me wrong, I don't like bad-natured heckling. And that goes on to the next bit, which is, he said hecklers would be another good one. How do you deal with hecklers? So there's two types of hecklers in magic, isn't there? There's the good-natured, having a laugh heckler. And by hecklers, it can be in a stage situation. I suppose that's what I think of when I think about hecklers, so stage or street, but also when you're actually performing close-up magic, when someone's doing that thing of constantly wanting to get involved. And there's different ways of dealing with this. My way of dealing, again, coming from being a street performer, when I used to walk out in Covent Garden on the cobbles, and there would be the Punch and Judy pub at the top, and sometimes you get people that are really drunk just start heckling you straight away, and that's hard because you haven't really established anything yet. So my way of dealing with that, and it's up his sleeve, absolutely. My way of dealing with that would be to not, what I'd be feeling was, oh, I'm going to have to work now, but I would smile at them and try and have a laugh with them, and kind of, it was almost like, yeah, good one, kind of thing. And usually, after a while, I was quite good at having a really good fake laugh. So they would shout out, it's up his sleeve, you know, something really crass. And I would look like I found it genuinely funny, and that was a good one, and well done, mate. And then I would give them a bit of banter back, like, come on, give me a chance, you know. And that most 80% and 90% of the time worked for me because I acknowledged what they said, I gave them their little moment. I didn't kick back at them straight away and try and humiliate them, which is what some people do. And sometimes that would soften it and they would let me go. Now, if that didn't happen, I would usually then start getting the heckling gags out, none of which were mine. I was a bit of a hack on the street. Some would argue that I probably am now, but but it was, I would say things, I'd do the one of, you know, just to let you know, mate, the idea of heckling is to make me look stupid. You know, great line. And just, if it's said right, just gets a really good laugh. There's loads of lines, and I won't go into that. But they would only come out if they felt natural and if they felt they were coming from a decent place, and it wasn't like, if it feels too, you know, if you ever see someone do heckle lines and they're not very natural with those lines, it just sounds like they're reading off a bit of paper, and it just doesn't work. People have got to believe in it. And sometimes if you do it with a little wink to the heckler, they'll kind of be in on it as well. You haven't really cut them down. You kind of smile at them afterwards, and that would sometimes work. Failing that, if that didn't work, I used to say something after a while that felt like it was out of character, and it would sometimes get a big round of applause. This is on stage or in the street. So I'd do these lines, I'd do the thing, try and have a laugh, do the lines first, and when I realised they were just trying to mess the show up, and you can see other people getting frustrated at them, not you, then I just used to break character and just say something like, and I'm going to swear, by the way, so if you don't like it, I used to say something like, oh, just shut up, you twat, like that. And it would always get a huge round of applause, a massive laugh, because that juxtaposition of because people know you're trying to do the thing. Yeah, Jimmy Carr's great with hecklers. People know you're trying to do the lines, you're trying to do it properly, you're doing it well, and they know that doesn't work. So if they see you kind of lose it in a very human way, but very quickly, and then regain character, it's a really powerful thing. I used to love doing it. Shut up, you twat. And but I wouldn't do it in close-up. But on a stage when you've got everybody behind you, it would get a huge cheer, and every time nearly every time the person would shut up. But it rarely got to that point. It was people that were very drunk, and you knew you couldn't influence. I think as performers, we need to learn how to do that. We need to learn how to deal with some hecklers in common phrases. Great. So there's a tip there. It is, I mean, it's funny, isn't it? Because people are very down on using standard phrases, and I get that. We do have to come out of our own stuff. But I think that if you're starting out, I do go with the Darren Brown thing of, you know, when you just want to gain confidence. And once you've got confidence, this stuff is pretty easy. Once you're out there, because even if you can't deal with it, it's not the end of the world, you know. So I think once you've got confidence, it's okay to just get in your comfort zone, learn how to deal with it, use some standard lines. As long as they're standard, they're not taken off of someone that has recently written them, and they're public, you know. But if you know, there are some standard lines out there. Get used to them, get comfortable, and then start putting your own stuff in. I just said, and this might be controversial. I don't think it will be. No, I don't mean controversial in a bad way, but you could disagree with this. a lot of people say there's no such thing as a bad audience. I see this a lot on Facebook, and I see it a lot on the Magic Cafe. And I usually see it for people that aren't really professional performers. You know, because they've read in a book somewhere that there's no such thing as a bad audience. It's the performer's job to win the audience round. Now, I could work with the hardest audience. When I was on form in Covent Garden, which was only for a few years, because I did lose form after a while, I could deal with pretty much everything. But sometimes you can have just the wrong audience for the wrong show. Someone's put something on Facebook actually the other day saying I was doing a show, and it was someone that had seen them perform before, and it was just the wrong set out, and it just happens sometimes. And someone else said, well, you should have refused to do it. No, do you know what? Sometimes you just look at it and go, it's going to be a bit of a shocker. Nobody dies. I would pre-frame that sometimes to the bookers, saying, look, I think I'm going to struggle here, just to let you know it's, you know, not, you've got to be careful how you do it. But I think I think an audience has a responsibility, if they're in an audience and they're watching a show, to give that performer some respect and give them a chance at the beginning, and not jump on them after 20 seconds if they haven't made them howl with laughter. You know, I think there is a responsibility there if you're in an audience to behave yourself. And then if the performer is shocking, then that's a different thing. But that's just a little bit on performance. I think that, was there anything else in there? I mean, it did mention that you wanted to know about pocket management. I'm shocking at pocket management. I've been in close-up for years now, and at the end of every gig, I have torn envelopes in some pockets. It's just all over the place. So what I would suggest is keep it to a minimum. I'm trying now to start cutting things back, which is hard because I review stuff and some of it stays in and I love it. And I'm trying not to have these sort of bulging pockets in my suit. I was even tempted to go back to just a deck of cards, but I don't think that'd be, it might get a bit boring. But yeah, so what I started doing relatively recently, a couple of years ago, is I would just make sure that I reset quite often during the gig for my own sanity as well. So if you're doing a couple of hours, every 20 minutes or something, I'd walk off, get in a corner, just reset everything. Even if there's not much to reset, make sure the tatty bits of torn paper and torn cards and everything are out of the way. Make sure I've got everything, give myself a couple of minutes and then go back to it. And I found that was really, really useful to me. So to constantly reset, keep it to a minimum. But I'm just experimenting at the moment, so I've got stuff all over the place. I've got forks and it's just a mess. I'm looking for my Sharpie because I've just done a new trick with that. I've started doing the Turner watch, by the way, live. A few people have said, can you review it? No, I can't, but I can give you my opinion on it, on my own experiences with it. And I know this sounds awful because I've got an affiliate link, but it's the one thing that I said that I do this year because it terrifies me doing anything to do with technology. I've got real fear of it. So I've been doing the calculator app, and I can say I had quite a tough gig the other day. Everybody's hammered. It was really noisy, so they were finding it hard to say type what in, but I thought it was worth it for the payoff. And I did it 7 times in an hour, and every time the lovely thing about it is that it's the toxic force basically. So they do three 3-digit numbers, whatever you want, and the last person puts in the time of day. And then there's a prediction with a number, which is great. And then you say, but look at the watch and the time of day, and it's such a kicker. It's amazing. One of the worst things a spectator can do is touch. Absolutely. That is one thing that I didn't mention about Hecklers, spectators. This is now my approach. Wish I could afford one. There'll be an affiliate link. Oh, God, terrible, isn't it? Okay, people that touch you as it's. When you're performing magic, getting their hands in your pockets. Do you know what my approach is? I just walk away from them. You're absolutely right. It's not okay. Now, if it's kind of in good nature and they're kind of like, and I'll sometimes say, oh, I thought that was socially unacceptable to put your hands in someone else's pocket or something like that, and try and laugh it off. But it's awful. I do tend to say, draw the line at that. I think there's a thing in my contract that says about behaviour that is unacceptable, and there is behaviour that's unacceptable. And the lovely thing about being a close-up magician is you can walk away from a table. I think you're absolutely justified in doing that. If someone's misbehaving, being awful, I don't have to do that table, and I don't care if it's the director of the company either. If someone is swearing at me, they're rude, they're misogynist to someone, they're racist, I can see something, it's just a no-go. I'll walk away from it. I've never had a complaint from doing that since, and I may do one day, but that would be fine. No, hands in your pocket, grabbing stuff on you is just something I'll say politely sometimes and just kind of go, do you know what? I'll leave you to it, and come back later, and I won't, or something. So that's that. Getting all serious. You don't have to tolerate that sort of behaviour. You really don't. There is a little bit of. I think to be a performer, you have to have a little bit of status sometimes to control a situation, and there's a fine line between confidence and arrogance. I've seen performers go out with that arrogance thing, and that's usually insecurity. That's overcompensating, and that I've done it. All right, so I'm not. It's just something you've got to find that balance. Confidence is like you're still being polite and lovely to them, but you're showing that you're not going to put up with it any crap. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I think just, you know, it's like having a deck of cards in it. You go doing too many flourishes and stuff. Pulling out a gun isn't. You go and too bit cocky, and that's again, it's just a balance of being very likable, very confident, and not arrogant. And that's again, it's just playing and look at how you are as a person. Be authentic in your performance, and that's it always comes down to authenticity. It always comes down to, yes, you're an extended version of yourself, you're a performy version of yourself, but you are still you. And if you've got good values, if you keep them in check and you work with ethics and you know, you're just nice, people will want to work with you. So getting the gigs. The last thing on this is there's so much about marketing. It's all about marketing. Someone said on Facebook not long ago, so there was a beginner, it was on the Magic Cafe, there was a beginner, and he was saying, what would you suggest, what tricks learning, and all that. And someone said, forget about the magic, just become really good at marketing. So you can, all right, but you're going to get to a point where I know magicians that do very well that know free tricks. They're very good at marketing. You know, we all know them. But you've got to have some joy in what you're doing. You've got to keep fresh. We talked about this on the last video. And I think that, well, I know the best marketing you can do is for someone that can edit stuff to make it look really good. They know all that stuff. Dan Mission, hey, no, but that doesn't matter, Dan. Ask me a question in a minute and I'll stay on. Might as well keep going, doesn't matter, does it? So the best way you can get gigs, and I remember Bill Malone saying this on First DVD, do magic. That's the only way, because then, and the lovely thing is, when people book you because you've done magic, you're off the hook because they've seen you work. I love doing gigs with people that have seen me work because I don't have to prove myself. They know what they're doing. So, you know, they see they book you on the back of that, and if the gig doesn't go well, you can just turn around and go, well, you know, you saw me, and there's a story about that. It's always a good death story. I did not death as in people dying, but me dying on my ass. I did a gig for the police in Sheffield about 8 years ago, and I hadn't done the straight jacket and chain escape in a while. I used to do it on the street, died on my ass on a cruise ship. They asked me never to go back, so I kind of stopped doing it when it wasn't a street thing. But this police commissioner or someone asked me, they said, oh, we saw you do the straight jacket and chains on the street 2 years ago. I want you to do that at the corporate. I said, I don't do that for corporate, I do the magic corporate. And he was paying me a decent whack. And he said, not massive, but he said, come on, really, they'll love it. And I caved in. So I did the straight jacket and chain escape to the whole, one of those gigs, if it had gone well, I'd have got a load of work from it and absolutely died on my arse. And I remember being in the straight jacket and chains. I'd taken my top off. These people, it was all, everything was wrong. Very posh do. I'd taken my top off, all hairy and hideous, and loads of knob gags and stuff like that. I'm very, very ashamed, not proud. And I remember being in the straight jacket, and I'd done this gag that always killed on the street. And I remember hearing it silence, and I just heard this woman say, I can't believe this. And that was just before I did my finale. It was, oh God. So, point being, someone that booked me for a very nice gig once said to me one day, I was thinking, I'm a bit nervous, I hope it goes well. And he said to me, well, if it doesn't go well, it's my fault. And I said, what do you mean? He said, because I booked you. If a booker books someone on the basis of what they've seen, it's their fault if it doesn't go well. Yes, you might have a bad day and stuff, but if it's a wrong act for the wrong scenario, it's not the performer's fault. A lot of the time, it's the booker's fault. They should know what they're booking. So, not saying I agree with that. I think it's a good way to go. It's a good thing to think about. So there you go. That's 25 minutes. Thanks for coming. Again, sorry I missed yesterday. I'm gonna attempt to do this every Friday, but keep your eye on notifications. If you don't get notifications already and you haven't pressed a little thing, do, because I do put a little message out when I can't do the Mondays. I've got a load of reviews coming out soon, so please do watch them. I hit a bit of a plateau, and I got a little bit overwhelmed because I really wanted to do the reviews, and I'm reading, just finished Andy Gladwin's book that I'm going to review next, the Pure Imagination one. And I was getting sent stuff to review, and I was finding it hard to keep up with stuff and work, and the viewers have been going up nicely, but slowly now. There's kind of a bit of a plateau. So it's really motivating for me if I can sort of see the comments and if you share it. So if you do go on the cafe and you do want to let people know about it, there's still apparently a lot of people that don't know about this, which is fine, but it'd be lovely to get it out there more. Always send stuff to me. yeah, you can review it with me, Dan. So if you can share this on Facebook or social media, just with a like, hey, if anybody likes a good review show, have a look at this. I will share pretty much anything about performing. I'm not, some people are very closet, they close it in, don't they? But, all right, Roger Woods, too late, I'll watch this later. Yeah, have a look, it's a long one. But I think that's it, unless there's any burning questions. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Thanks, nice one. Thank you very much. Nice one, Dan, as well. Same, 4 o'clock back here next Monday, unless I've got something wrong and I'm somewhere else, but I'll put a thing out. Check out cardmagiccourse.com. Have a look at all the stuff below that I'll put on there at some point. Cheers. See you later.